First, I think I should talk a little bit about my background. My parents are European. Basically, my mother, she's Polish. She's a Holocaust survivor. She came to Brazil when she was 17 because my grandfather, her father, had come to Brazil before the war, and they were separated. And from this, her whole family, um, she and her brother were really the only survivors apart from one cousin. Um, my father's side is also Polish, but my father's parents, they came to Brazil in the early 30s. So I'm saying that because having this European background made my parents, from when we were growing up, take us to Europe for holidays, and they wanted to show us different places. So that was quite amazing because, I went to many different countries in Europe. I went to every time to many museums. I was exposed to art, to theater, music. I studied music. I studied also in Brazil. I studied English and French growing up. Um, so, I had this really kind of upbringing that it was a natural movement for me to later on in life wanted to live abroad for a while. So the first time I went abroad to live was after I finished architecture school in 83. I decided I wanted to live abroad for a while, so I applied to do a master's degree in sculpture because by that time I was already making art, and I got in at Parsons School. So I went to New York in 84 to live there. And it was a very interesting moment in New York too, in the 80s. It was super vibrant and a lot of things happening. But after having done 5 years of architecture school in Brazil, I was just interested while in New York of being in the museums. And it was actually the first time I went to the United States because prior to that, I only went to Europe. So, it was the first time I saw a Rothko, a Pollock, and all those works and people that I had never seen in Brazil, I had never seen in Europe. So I went to museums all the time. I was convincing my teachers at school that the best for me was to go to museums. Because I was quite tired of being in the school. Then I realized after that year that what I really wanted to do was just to work, And so I quit after the first year. Plus, it was quite expensive to be in New York, and I was feeling this pressure from my family that it was hard, and I really didn't want to spend my time, for example, washing dishes or doing things like this, because I thought, hey, if I go back to Brazil, I will be able to work as an artist and work as a professional. I can use architecture and things like that. I don't need to wash dishes. I should use my time to develop my work. I was really young. I was 22 years old, 23. So that's what I did. I went back to Brazil, and I got a studio in Rio, and I had my first solo show at in a gallery, which was a really great gallery in Rio, in 1985. So that was, to me, although I had shown before that in many group shows and important group shows in Rio and elsewhere in Brazil, that was for me the my first solo show. And then from then on, um, I did a lot. I moved in 87. I decided that Rio was kind of slow, and I moved to Sao Paulo in 1987, and I lived there until 1992. At that moment, I was invited in 89 to be part of the São Paulo Bienal. And I did this really big installation, which was quite impressive. From that moment on, I was invited to many international shows, the Venice Bienal, to the Aperto in 1990, and a lot of different shows in Germany, in Italy, in France, and culminating a bit in New York for the 20th century Latin American artists at the MoMA in 93, where I came and I did a special installation commissioned by the museum. In between, I got prizes, I was traveling. It was really great. I mean, I was traveling all over the world, working, making installations in situ, and having this really, really great experience, being quite young, in all that. It was before, it was until 90 to 93 that when I was, living in Paris, that I met my ex-husband um, who is a journalist. And so until that moment, I was planning to go back to Brazil, and I had quite a following in Brazil. I had my studio, everything. But then I fell in love and I stayed. And the rest is history, because we moved, quite a lot. I think I am a very curious and adventurous person. So it really, it was the perfect life for me. We lived in Paris. I have two children. They were born in Paris. Then we moved to Berlin. We lived there 3 years. Then we moved to New York, where I live. We lived 9 years. Then we moved to London, where we lived 5 years. And it was in 2014, we actually divorced, and everybody moved back to the States in 2015. And I was in New York in 2015, and I felt that my life had changed so much from 10 years ago. And I just felt I wanted to have a different lifestyle. I wanted to go to a place that was a little low key, and I was missing living near the ocean, with more vegetation around me. And so the idea to come to Miami came up. During all those, different moves, as an artist, it's obvious that you can work everywhere, anywhere, at any time. But when you move, you have to start over. You have to create a new studio, a new network. At that time, when I did it, there was no internet. It was started only in the late 90s, really, and to be so accessible. So, it wasn't that easy. It took always at least 6 months for me to get organized again with the studio, with things going and all that. Obviously, I was moving with a family, so it was always my priority to get that family organized before I got organized. So, on the one hand, it was fantastic and I learned so much. I met so many people. I was exposed to so many different things, and I was showing and I was working and all that. On the other hand, I had to start over again many times, many times. And so that's why I came to Miami, because it felt like geographically made sense to be closer to Brazil, where I keep a studio. I have, my parents and my brothers, and the gallery who represents me since 89, it's my main gallery in São Paulo. And Miami is in a way very similar to Brazil because it has this, it's tropical, it's lush, it has the sea, it's sunny, and I think that because it's a little hub for Latin America, um, makes me feel more at home. It has a context for my work because, during those first years in Europe, doing what I do, I felt that nobody understood what is she doing, why is she doing this? There was no context whatsoever for me. Being here, um, people understand where I come from, why I do what I do, why is this way? You understand?